Hi everybody, my name's Julia from Bobbins and Buttons, and today I'm going to show you how to insert the elastic into the waist of the violet leggings. So what I'm going to do to start with is stitch the front to the back at the side seam. So I've got two fronts, two backs, and I'll end up with two waistbands once I've stitched them together. So I'm going to put right sides together and make sure my notches are at the bottom edge for the back waistband, and the curve is at the bottom edge for the front waistband. So there's my two bands. So now what I need to do is put right sides together and stitch them around the upper edge. So this would be slightly different if you were using the pockets. The pockets would already be made if you're doing the back pocket at the top of the back waistband, but this is just a simple pair with no additional pockets in the waistband. So it's right sides together, front to front, back to back. Let's just double check. I quite like to use these little clips when I'm overlocking, just to hold things rather than pins. Let me just check that I've got, yeah, that's the front and the front together. The fronts, just check they're not the wrong way round. And just matching up the seams and matching up the raw edges all the way along. And now I'm going to go ahead and overlock the whole of the upper edge of the waistband together. So there's my waistband stitched together. I just want to say I've overlocked all of this. It's absolutely fine to sew these leggings together on a regular sewing machine, but all you need to do is just make sure that you're using a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch and you've got a jersey needle in your sewing machine. But what I'd do is probably just test out a few pieces because you want to get the best amount of stretch from your stitch. So if you were to sew it together with a straight stitch, you'd find that when you pull the seam, all the stitches would snap. There is a new product on the market which is a stretch thread, so that's worth testing. I've not personally used it myself yet, but you could also try that if you're just sewing together with a regular sewing machine. So there we've got the waistband stitched together at the upper edge. So when we open that out, we have one that will be inside and one that will be outside. So this will be our upper edge when it's stitched. And what we're going to do now is sew the elastic to what will be the inside piece. So let's just bring in the elastic. There's a size chart for how big to cut the elastic on the pattern, but what I'm just going to do now is just mark the quarter points on this. So if we bring the elastic in half, we can just mark with chalk on the edge of the elastic there. Then we can bring that point, that halfway point, and bring that to the end so that we can mark the quarters, and we'll just mark on that edge and then turn over. We can fold that again, just keep your ends accurately matched up and mark there. So now we've got that nicely marked into quarters. And what I'm just going to do, we've got the side seams which we'll use for the halfway mark, but we'll just mark the quarter of the waist at the front and the back so that we've got something to match to. So again, I'm just going to fold that so that the side seams match up and just bring the chalk there. And this way we're just checking that the elastic is evenly distributed when we pin it on. So we've got that marked. So what I'm going to do now is bring in the elastic and match the cut edge to the side seam, just slightly over the side seam, but just only fractionally. And then I'm going to go round matching the quarter marks on the elastic to the quarter marks on the waistband, but I'm keeping this edge free, so that I'm not stitching them together. I'm only stitching on one side of the waistband. So I'm just going to start by marking all of those quarters. So this one goes to the side seam, and this one goes to the chalk mark at the centre frontal back. And then this, I'm going to butt the elastic up to side by side. I'm not overlapping it, because the way we're working, we don't really want a thick bulky bit here. So by butting it up, you're going to keep it nice and smooth, and we're going to stitch on both edges, so that's going to hold that together really nicely, and keep that piece secure, so it doesn't need to be fixed in any other way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it to the sewing machine using a zigzag stitch along this upper edge, making sure it's just below the seam and not catching any of this other side of the waistband in. You can go along and put a few more pins in around the waistband if you want. It's not a problem. It should fit fairly flush. It's worth checking that before you start sewing to check that it does fit nicely. And then I'm going to sew on this edge and then sew on this edge, but I'll show you each of those. So there's our first row of stitching done. So what I'm going to do now is just stitch around the second edge. I found it easier to keep this just anchored at the quarter points and manage the elastic as I stitched round, but I was mindful that I wasn't catching the other side of the waistband in as I stitched. But now that's anchored, it should be fairly straightforward to just stitch this second side. So there's our second line of stitching done. So let me turn that through so that you can see how that looks. You can see that the elastic is just butted up, just done some little bit of backward stitching there. I've used quite a deep, wide zigzag stitch because I know it has a good flexibility, which is what we want for the waist of the leggings. So now when I turn this through, this part will be the internal waistband and the one with no elastic on will be the external. So let's have a look at that. So there's our internal waistband. I know, I'm sorry, it's a black pair of leggings, which is not easy to see. But what I'm going to do now is stitch these two edges together so that the waistband is one piece, and then I will apply that to the leggings. So these two edges just need to be stitched together. Put a few clips around there. And then the waistband can just be worked as one complete piece. So I hope you found that useful. If you have any further questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more videos, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.